He didn't fight the arrest. In the strobe-lit VIP section of Ibiza's Pacha nightclub, the music still pulsed. But Eddie Burton stood still. No panic, no protests. Spanish police had arrived with a name and a face. But the man they were looking for didn't officially exist. Not under that alias. Not in that country. He looked like a tourist. Clean. Baby-faced. But the name on the arrest warrant carried weight across Europe. Eddie Burton, 23, was the architect of a trafficking network that had smuggled kilos of heroin, cocaine, and ketamine into the UK. He wasn't caught with drugs. He didn't drive the lorries. He barely touched the product. From Liverpool to Amsterdam, his fingerprints were on everything that mattered. He didn't just move weight, he moved the entire system, quietly and remotely, with his ex-partner handling the UK end like a logistics firm. It took months of surveillance, digital forensics, and a nightclub sting to bring him down. This is the story of the schoolboy who ran a £20 million drug empire, and the moment it all collapsed in the glow of Ibiza's club lights. Before the lorries, before the nightclub, before the 20 million, he was just a kid in Liverpool, 10 years old, uniform half done up. Trainers are too big, and already in the game. It started simple, a short walk, a plastic bag, a nod from someone older. The kind of task you don't question when you're trying to prove yourself. To outsiders, he looked harmless, a child. But that was the point. Older boys used him like camouflage. Soft face, small frame, never drew attention. He ran for them, then watched them, and later, he outgrew them. By 13, he knew the patterns. When to talk, when to vanish, how to spot police before they clocked you. He didn't flash money or chase reputation. He learned the system in silence. Quick to spot, quicker to adapt, and always paying attention. People say he was trouble from the start. Family members would later call him a tearaway. Too smart, too angry, always pushing boundaries. But it wasn't chaos he wanted. It was controlled. He wanted to move weight without ever touching it. By the time he was 16, he'd stopped being the courier. He was giving the orders. Liverpool gave him the education. Amsterdam would give him the scale. At 19, he slipped out of the country. No big send-off, no missing persons report, just a flight, a flat, and a different name on the lease. Back home, no one knew exactly where he'd gone, but they knew why. He wasn't running anymore. He was building. This wasn't a holiday. It was a shift. Burton had seen the ceiling in his own postcode. Too many egos, too many watching eyes. In Amsterdam, the real work could begin, not with violence, but with structure. He didn't carry knives or wave cash. He met quietly, sat in the back, and took mental notes. Slowly and patiently, he built his supply line. Not as someone importing weight, but as someone managing it, coordinating hands without ever being seen. He lived small, rented short-term, changed phones often, never left a trail longer than a few blocks. While others bragged about movement, Burton studied it. Ferry schedules, freight companies, driving hours. And behind him, he left nothing. Back in Liverpool, people still spoke his name, but no one could say where he was. That's how he wanted it. He didn't need to be feared. He needed to be invisible. From Amsterdam, he reached out. Spain came next. A second base. Sunlight, villas, and another layer between him and the risk. Ibiza gave him distance. It gave him cover. And when he needed to disappear completely, it gave him silence. He moved people. Quiet links in a chain. Couriers with clean records. Drivers who asked no questions. Brokers who only knew one end of the job. Each played their part. None saw the full picture. He gave just enough. A route, a drop-off, a name. Nothing more. And watching all of it, quietly pulling the strings, was a boy who once delivered weed in a school bag. Now 21, hiding in plain sight and building something industrial. While Burton slipped further into Europe, She stayed anchored in Liverpool. Her job wasn't to watch from the sidelines. It was to make sure everything kept moving. Sian Banks wasn't decorated. She was the bridge. She looked like someone chasing a lifestyle, not running logistics for a smuggling empire. Instagram said yachts, pool days, city breaks, beaches in June, designer bags in soft filtered light. But behind the stories was a different role, one that didn't show up in hashtags. Money had to be laundered. Couriers had to be briefed. Routes had to be checked, changed, and covered. She handled it all, from behind the scenes and occasionally on the front line. Between June 2022 and October 2023, she flew to Amsterdam and Spain nearly every month. Always short stays, always alone. On 2 of those trips, she came back with more than a suitcase. Phone evidence later confirmed it: ketamine and cocaine hidden in her luggage. No criminal record, no flagged history, just another holidaymaker coming through arrivals. But phones remember what people forget. Buried in her messages were plans, drop-offs, and cold reassurance. After one major seizure in Dover, she texted Burton. Her prints might be on the bags. He told her not to worry. No one had her prints on file anyway. She wasn't a mule. She was the one doing the scheduling. The NCA later said she was essential, the organizer who made sure Burton's distance never became a weakness. She moved cash, prepped trips, sourced clean couriers. She was both a firewall and fixer. And while he kept his name off everything, she left fingerprints, literally. Her calm was her mistake. She thought the background was safe, that no one would look twice at a woman flying home alone with a designer carry-on. But every quiet roll leaves a trace, and every trace eventually leads back. It was meant to be routine. Just another HGV rolling into Dover, paperwork clean, driver calm, boxes loaded. But Border Force officers flagged it anyway. Inside, hidden beneath shopping bags and taped up cartons, they found something else: 90 kilos of ketamine and 50 kilos of cocaine. July 3rd, 2022. One seizure, one quiet red flag. 6 weeks later, it happened again. A second lorry, a different driver. This time, the concealment was professional, industrial. A modified fuel tank, reinforced and sealed. Inside, 142 kilos of cocaine and 25 kilos of heroin. Packed tight, built to move undetected. Combined, the 2 shipments totaled 307 kilos. Street value, £20 million. The drivers didn't have answers, but the loads did. Forensics found traces on the wrapping, on the bags, inside the adapted tank. One set belonged to Eddie Burton, linking him not to the transport, but to the preparation. He hadn't crossed the border, but the prints traveled without him. Another set belonged to Sian Banks, on the ketamine bags from the first seizure. A direct trace from someone who claimed to be in the background. Together, the evidence didn't just show association, it proved contact. In the rooms where the drugs were packed. On the materials meant to vanish into distribution, neither of them was caught at the border. But both had touched what was meant to stay hidden. And when investigators pulled the threads, flight records, phone extractions, encrypted chats, the scale of the operation began to reveal itself. The drugs were just the beginning. The people moving them were much harder to see. They thought encryption would protect them. No names, no calls, just strings of messages passed through Signal and WhatsApp. Throwaway numbers, fake contact names, devices wiped every few weeks. It was meant to keep them invisible, but nothing is truly invisible. Especially when the first seizure triggers a digital review. Investigators recovered more: logs, transfers, flights. The pair communicated like colleagues, timelines, quantities, cover stories, coordinating multi-kilo shipments like logistics managers. Their chats used code, but not enough. References to the thing or the run matched exactly to known shipment dates, prices lined up, locations lined up. Even the emojis weren't accidental. a snowflake for cocaine, a pill for MDMA. They planned everything and saved nothing, but the phone did. And then came the travel trail. Between June 2022 and October 2023, Banks flew to Amsterdam and Spain nearly every month. She wasn't on holiday. She was in the room before the bags were sealed. Her boarding passes, her hotel check-ins, her return flights days before each seizure. Every movement left a mark, and investigators matched them, one by one. Encryption gave them confidence, but not immunity. The NCA now had the blueprint, not theory, not a rumor, a timeline, a trail, a pattern of movement and coordination, and with it, two names they couldn't ignore. Sian Banks wasn't just moving drugs, she was building cover. During the pandemic, when international travel ground to a halt, she found a way through, not just for herself, but for others. Investigators later uncovered a scam she was running in parallel, selling doctored COVID-19 travel documents, fake test results, altered vaccine records, proof of travel exemptions, all tailored to get people past restrictions. At first glance, it looked like opportunism, just another fraud in a time of chaos. But when examined alongside her regular trips to Amsterdam and Spain, it became something else, an operational advantage. She didn't need forged documents for profit. She needed them to move unnoticed, a side hustle on paper. But in practice, a tool, another layer of cover, another way to stay moving while most of the world stood still. There's no evidence the scam moved the product directly, but it moved her. And in an operation built on timing and silence, that was enough. The fraud didn't take the network down, but it added weight. And it showed one thing clearly. She wasn't just running drugs, she was running interference. Let's move back to the core investigation part. By the time the second lorry was seized, Eddie Burton was long gone. He hadn't disappeared. He'd relocated like he did previously. He stayed out of the UK, out of reach, out of sight, but not out of mind. The NCA began building a file, shipment timelines, phone analysis, Sian Banks' travel records. Every detail pointed to Burton, not as a foot soldier, but as the one behind the curtain. The evidence was growing, but they needed him on British soil. By mid-2023, the case was strong enough to trigger international action. Burton had become the subject of a multi-agency manhunt, led by the NCA's Joint International Crime Centre in partnership with Dutch and Spanish authorities. They didn't know where he'd land next. But Ibiza made sense. He'd been seen there before. Banks had flown in and out. The island gave him distance, sun, and a steady supply of anonymity. In August 2023, Spanish police moved. Intelligence placed Burton at Pacha nightclub, not on the run, not in hiding, on a night out. They didn't wait. Inside the club's VIP section, surrounded by lights and bass lines, officers made the arrest. No chase, no struggle. He was using an alias. The ID didn't match, but fingerprints did. He wasn't just a name anymore, he was a match. And within weeks, extradition paperwork was underway. Burton had built a network across borders, believing distance made him untouchable. But the distance only delayed the inevitable. Spanish authorities held him long enough for the paperwork to clear. Extradition was processed through Germany, then finalized by the UK's National Extradition Unit. In March 2024, Burton was flown back to Britain under guard. The transfer wasn't just a legal formality, it was the final move in a case that had taken nearly 2 years to build. By the time he landed, the prosecution had everything. 2 seized shipments, a combined 307 kilos of Class A and B, coordinated messages between Burton and Banks, flight logs, burner phones, payment trails, and forensic evidence that linked them to the drugs before they ever crossed into the UK. He didn't come quietly, but he didn't fight either. There was no point. In the meantime, Banks had already fallen. Sian was arrested in December 2023 at her home in Liverpool. No fanfare, just a knock at the door and an evidence folder that left no room for doubt. On her seized phone, encrypted chats, drop-off instructions, travel logs, and casual mentions of shipments by weight. Previously, they were only monitoring the messages, but now they have strong evidence of their work ethics. They stood separately in the dock. No eye contact, no shared defense. The courtroom didn't need backstory. It had transcripts, timelines, and the contents of 2 lorries. On the 12th of February 2025, at Canterbury Crown Court, one of the UK's most quietly ambitious drug networks came to a close. Eddie Burton, 23, pleaded guilty to 4 counts of importing Class A and B drugs, heroin, cocaine, ketamine, and cannabis. He wasn't described as reckless, he was described as methodical, a coordinator of an exceptional reach who operated through encrypted systems, third-party couriers, and a continent-wide supply chain. The judge made it clear, Burton believed that encryption, distance, and youth would shield him, that living abroad meant living beyond the reach of UK law, but it didn't. Sian admitted to 7 offences, including drug importation, money laundering, and direct coordination. The court rejected any claim that she was a passive participant or coerced partner. The judge called her indispensable. The NCA called it a warning, a reminder that the modern drug trade doesn't always look like violence. Sometimes it looks like flight itineraries, fake documents, and a message that says, "Don't worry, your prints were never taken." But they were. And the system kept the receipt. Eddie Burton was sentenced to 24 years in prison, a full term, weighed not just by the drugs, but by the structure behind them. A business built in silence, powered by control. Sian, 25, received 17 years. What do you make of the sentencing? Too harsh, too light, or exactly what they deserved? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read everyone. And if you want more real UK crime stories like this, subscribe, turn on notifications, and let us know what you want us to cover next. There's always another case to uncover.